Shabbat Shalom. So I lived in Baltimore for 4 years in my first pulpit out of rabbinic school. And there I was introduced to the joy of deer. Deer were not common in San Diego where I was from, and definitely not common in Los Angeles, although we did have a few mountain lions here and there. That's probably why we didn't have deer. But there were no deer where I grew up. But in Baltimore, there were deer aplenty. The population had rebounded, I had told, and they were everywhere, most importantly, of course, in the roads. But that meant that there was always a special opportunity. Because you see, deer are kosher. So if you happen to hit a deer with your car, then you can pull over, take out a knife, slice off a little bit, take it home, have some lovely venison. No? No. How many of you are saying no because you know that would be nevela, that would be an animal that had been killed by a non-kosher form of slaughter? And how many of you were saying no because, ick, you're not going to eat roadkill? Deer is kosher. Yes, deer is kosher. It's perfectly possible to have kosher deer, not having killed it with your car. Yes. Even hunting in the normal, like, bang-bang style, no, that is not proper shechita. There is a rabbinic story of a rabbi who was so good with the bow and arrow that he could actually shoot the birds in the air in a way that would shech them as the arrow went through. But the rest of us are not quite so talented.
So just by the way, you could net a deer and then bring your shochet with you to...
Well, you would net or have other snares that would allow you to capture an animal. And then in ancient times, most people were their own shochet. You didn't have one in your back pocket. You learned how to slaughter your own animals. It was only later that it became a much more specialized skill. But everyone would have known the basics for those types of things. But getting back to that ick factor, I'm sure that most of you here driving down the road, if you see a dead animal, do not think, oh, I need a little extra. And I'm not entirely convinced that that's because of it not being kosher, but because of the visceral reaction we have to seeing the corpse of an animal. And that viscera, our gut feeling, is actually rooted in Judaism. That is to say, there are plenty of places in the world, and many different cultures, for whom something that's dead on the side of the road, when dealt with properly and carefully to make sure that it isn't diseased or anything, is absolutely a boon. It is a wonderful thing. Certainly our ancestors living in the savannas of Africa 100,000, 200,000 years ago would have loved to have come across a dead deer as a gift for not having to hunt it down, and that wonderful protein snack right there. But Torah has introduced the idea that such things, nevela as we call them, should disgust us. They should create this visceral reaction as a reinforcement of the mitzvah. And this is a sort of double-edged sword, however. Because our visceral reactions are so powerful, the Torah clearly wants us to feel disgust at certain things. And our communities reinforce that feeling of disgust. And this is very powerful and very useful for keeping you from the roadkill. But our visceral reactions, our ick feelings, can also be misapplied. Disgust is not exactly an unblemished virtue. Disgust is something that should only be used in the right ways. Disgust can be used to justify racism, anti-Semitism, homophobia, all forms of hate and antagonism towards other people, and the mistreatment of many others. Because, those people, I don't, and now I am able to justify my behavior towards them. And they may dress it up with intellectual ideas that are at the root. But for many of them, it's just like that visceral reaction. Their guts tell them this is wrong. And they probe no more deeply to find out that their guts are mistaken. As it turns out that our viscera are not actually a reliable compass to right behavior. They are a good reinforcement. They are a nice Jiminy Cricket-style reminder that some things we shouldn't do, but they are not the source that tell us what is right and wrong. We cannot rely on our viscera that way. But we can use them for a mitzvah. It's one of the great ironies of how we are designed. Our guts will sometimes tell us that what is right is actually wrong, or what is wrong is actually right, but we can turn around and use our guts to do something that is right without fear. It's called organ donation. Your guts actually have a very good purpose, not only keeping you alive day in, day out, but when you're no longer using them, helping other people stay alive as well. Now, for many of us, the thought of, at some point when I die, someone is going to take out a big knife, slit me open like a fish, pull out the guts, stick them in a box, and then shove them into someone else, might generate a little bit of that ick factor, might generate a visceral reaction of, I'm not sure I'm so comfortable with that. Now, part of the reason you might feel that is because Judaism has done a good job of creating a visceral reaction against the mistreatment of the human body, both while it is alive, but even more so when the person has passed on, when the temptation to treat the body with disrespect becomes much greater and much easier to justify. Judaism prohibits cremation, the destruction of the lives, from suffering to blessing. But we have to make sure we can get over that ick factor, that guard that Judaism put in our minds to protect the body at all costs is adjusted to allow a small gate to say, yes, we protect the body so that it will be a benefit for them and a benefit for others. Of course, only according to the Jewish laws of when a person has actually passed away. We do not go in for organ harvesting of live people, especially not if they are unwilling. But when somebody has voluntarily said, I wish to donate my organs, we should celebrate this, we should applaud it, and we should encourage it. There is a very painful example from the news most recently in Israel of a family that was devastated by a terror attack in the Jordan Valley. Mother and two daughters driving along, someone shot up the car. The two girls were killed almost instantly. The mother lingered for days. When she passed, her organs were used for other people. There was a video that just went around this last week of her other children and husband listening to her heart beating inside of another woman who was near death, in desperate need of a transplant, and who has been saved now because of the gift that she gave, even as her own life was taken from her. This should also create a visceral response, one of pride, of appreciation, of respect, of honoring someone who would look forward and say, at some point, I will pass from this world. At that point, there may be things that I can still yet do to give life and blessing to others. That may be as simple as signing on a line, saying that I agree to allow this to be done so that others can enjoy this blessing. Work on reshaping your viscera. If you feel icky when considering this, reframe it. Understand that you are giving a blessing of life in a way that would have been an unimaginable miracle up until the modern times. To take a heart from one that is dying and give it to another so that they can live is one of the most beautiful and generous things a person can do. Something that indeed should fill us with love and compassion rather than ick. Allow yourself to see this. If you have not already done so, sign up to be an organ donor. I promise, when necessary, you won't need it, and someone else will have their life transformed. Shabbat Shalom.